Okay, so I looked at data from the 2015 USGS report, which was the last time they estimated water consumption in the US. And you can see on the top graph, there is the consumption over time. So the biggest trend is there is starting to be a decrease, mostly because thermoelectric is using a lot less water. Overall, the top 5 states were California for water consumption, which makes sense since they grow most of our food, Texas, Florida, Arkansas, and Idaho, surprisingly. And overall, we use 322 million gallons a day, of which about 75% is surface water, and the remaining approximately 25% is from groundwater. So overall, California uses the most groundwater. They use 21% of all groundwater. And the biggest sectors for water consumption were thermoelectric power, which I was really surprised. I didn't know they consume so much water, and irrigation, which they lumped together ag and irrigation for things like golf courses, cemeteries, parks, etc. And for thermoelectric, almost all the water used was from surface waters, and let's see, 81% of all groundwater withdrawals were in the western part of the United States. But as a whole, pretty much in the states, the consumption between surface water and groundwater was split. And there is starting to also be a decrease in the amount of water used for irrigation as we start to switch to things like sprinkler systems as opposed to the pivot arm irrigation system, which sprays water indiscriminately and a lot evaporates. So the data for Georgia tend to follow the trends of the USGS for the nation overall. There's been a drop in almost half the water usage from the 1980s to the present day. So now we use about 3,045 million gallons a day, which is much lower than the surrounding states, the Carolinas, Tennessee, Alabama, and Florida. And it mostly seemed to be due to the low amount of water we use for thermoelectric production. So it's only 741 million gallons a day, and the surrounding states have a much higher number than that. Public use accounts for 1,700 million gallons a day. And in Georgia, there's a major split in where the water comes from. So in South Georgia, as you can see on the state map on the left-hand side, most of the water comes from groundwater withdrawals. And in North Georgia, on the right-hand side, most withdrawals come from surface waters. And Georgia is unique in that Atlanta actually is the biggest metropolitan area served by the smallest watershed, which is surprising. So overall, the counties that use the most are Fulton, which makes sense, it has the largest population, Putnam, which was surprising, but they have a lot of electrical plants there, Chatham, which is Savannah, so that makes sense, Floyd, which apparently has a big electric plant, and Early County, which was really surprising to me because it's in super southeast Georgia, but they have a lot of timber and paper production there. So overall, as a whole, most water in Georgia comes from the surface. So about 1,000 million gallons a day are used from groundwater, and about double that, so 200,000 million gallons of water a day are used from surface waters. So most is actually used for thermo and irrigation, and there has been, which is surprising because there has been a 14% population increase in 10 years. So it's surprising that the largest chunk is not from the public sector. And paper production was the industry that used the most, which makes sense because we have a lot of civiculture. And bringing it home to the local water use, I live in Cobb County, which is one of the major metro Atlanta counties. We actually have close to 1 million people. It's a crazy big county. So most of the water here comes from surface waters because we don't really have many aquifers to tap into. The data that I found was from 2005. It was the only data I could find for Cobb County. Um, so overall, 459 million gallons are used a day, which, like the other trends, the national and the state trends, is a decrease from the 1980s where it was 900. So that's almost half the water, which was really surprising to me. So 91 million gallons is used for public use, which was the biggest sector besides thermoelectric, which apparently uses a lot of water in the United States. I didn't realize. So in Cobb County in particular, 362 million gallons of water a day are used for thermoelectric, which our main plant is Plant Atkinson, which was briefly offline in 2005 when this report was published. So I imagine that number is pretty high, and they were offline to switch from coal to natural gas. And I was honestly surprised that the public water use is so low because Cobb County has this reputation, especially East Cobb, of being very affluent and very image focused. So there are entire neighborhoods who have the most perfect, beautiful lawns, and apparently, according to Lowe's, that uses 125 gallons of water a day in the summer to keep it perfect. And I also was kind of surprised that water usage wasn't more because in Atlanta we seem to have poor water quality infrastructure. Like the amount of times that pipes have broken or fire hydrants have broken and the streets are just flooded is really surprising. So I was surprised that didn't use up more water because when water is pouring everywhere into the streets, obviously that uses a lot of water. So overall, I found this exercise pretty interesting and surprising. I thought most was going to be, most water was going to be used for agriculture, and I was really surprised to learn that thermoelectric does consume a lot of water.